Okay, we're going to talk about the main kind of cell division, which is called mitosis. There, okay, and also talk a little bit about how the genetic information is organized in the cell. So here we've got a cell, and if you look, if you look down a microscope, very clearly visible is the nucleus, and the nucleus contains all the instructions, genetic instructions that the cell needs. So every cell, apart from things like red blood cells, has a nucleus, and all the cells in your body contain identical genetic information, all descended from the original cell, the zygote that you are descended from. Okay, now the nucleus, we can think of it as being like a library of instructions, okay? And that library is arranged not in books, but we have chromosomes. And in the human genome, and your human nucleus, or every cell, you've got 46 different chromosomes. Different species will have slightly different numbers of chromosomes. Humans have 46. Right. And on those chromosomes, we have genes. And if you like, they are like the sentences in a book. And what are those? The instructions. So you might have a gene which say, give you blood group A, give you blood group B, give you brown hair, give you red hair, whatever. Yeah. And those instructions are written in DNA. So that's my analogy there. It's like, instead of ink and paper, they're written in DNA, in the chemical composition of the DNA. Okay, so we can't see the chromosomes most of the time. You look down a microscope, you can't see any chromosomes. But as a cell is about to start to get ready for division, the chromosomes then become visible. So we look at this cell here. So if you look down a microscope at some cells, like from a root tip of a plant, where these cells are rapidly dividing as the plant's growing, or some cells in your bone marrow as they're dividing to make new white blood cells, you will see chromosomes. Okay, and I've only drawn 6 chromosomes. Of course, in a human cell there are 46. If you wonder what happens is, well, when the cell isn't dividing, the DNA is all kind of stretched out for each chromosome like this, and what happens before, rather like rolling a ball of wool up, the DNA is coiled, and that's when you can see it as separate chromosomes. So that's what's going on there. Right, so let's have a closer look at what chromosomes look like. Now, if so in the past, then scientists have taken a photograph of a cell which is about to undergo division, and then they have cut out all the chromosomes from that. And scientists noticed that they exist in so-called homologous pairs. Now, so we look, so there's actually 23 pairs. So you can see they call it chromosome number 1. That was the biggest one. They're very similar to each other to look at in size. If you look at number 3, they're similar. They've both got this joining bit quite high up rather than in the middle. So you compare up the chromosomes like that. Now, it turns out each of those chromosomes, one of them, they're not really red and black. They both look exactly the same. But one of them comes from your father, and one comes from the mother. And so they're not genetically identical to each of those 2 chromosomes, but what you will find is that, for example, you might have an instruction on that chromosome there from the father saying, given blood group A. In the same place on the chromosome from the mother, there might be a different instruction saying, give him blood group O. And so that's why you end up being a mixture of the 2 sets of instructions that you get from your father and your mother. Right. So as I say, they're called homologous pairs. Now, you may also notice that each of those homologous pairs is divided into, it's like 2, and they are called, those 2 are called chromatids. So, for example, if you look at this one here, I've got one chromatid there which I'll color in orange, and another one which I'll color in yellow. Now, they are identical. They are genetically, they're identical to each other, those 2. And the whole point of cell division is to separate those 2 sets of identical instructions away from each other. So the chromatids are identical, but each pair of homologous chromosomes, they're not identical. They just kind of code for the same things. Right, so let's have a look at what happens in cell division then. So this is a cell about to undergo cell division, and to make simpler, rather than doing 6 like that, or 46 I should do, I've only drawn 4 chromosomes. There's 2 homologous pairs there, a big one and a small one. Now what happens is those chromosomes in this next stage of it, they line up. This is called the equator of the cell for obvious reasons. And if you look, you can see in the microscope that there's these small little filaments which are attached to the chromosomes. They're called microtubules, don't worry what they're called. And they seem to be attached to these bits here, which are called the poles of the cell. Then the next stage of cell division is you can see that these filaments contract and they pull the 2 chromatids away from each other towards opposite poles of the cell. So we're getting movement. Those chromatids are getting pulled that way, and these ones are getting pulled that way. And that one there, which we've just done in orange, is an exact copy of that yellow one there. Okay, so they're identical to each other, and they're both heading in separate ends of the cell. Right, eventually then you get to this stage where the separation of the chromatids is complete, and you get one lot at one end of the cell and one lot at the other end of the cell. Now cell division is complete now, and what's going to happen to those chromosomes are going to become invisible again. They're going to unravel like a ball of wool, and so you won't see the chromosomes anymore. And cell division is almost ready to happen now, because we've separated the 2 identical bits of genetic information. Okay, so we end up with 2 separate nuclei here, one there and one there, and they're going to be absolutely identical to each other. And then the cell starts pinching off, the cytoplasm starts pinching off here, and eventually you end up with 2 separate daughter cells. Okay, these are called daughter cells, and they are genetically exactly the same. Okay, and they're not quite ready to, can you think, well, can they divide again? Well, they can't, because look, before they can divide again, you have to get to this stage here. And you can see what's happened here. You have copied the chromatids. They copied the DNA of each chromosome, so you end up with 2 chromatids. And that takes a while to happen. The quickest it can happen is about 24, 36 hours in a human cell. All that DNA needs to be copied before the cell can divide again. And also, don't forget, in the cytoplasm, you're going to need, well, you've got all kinds of stuff in here, like mitochondria and ribosomes and other cell organelles. And they all need to be, you need to make, not duplicated as such, because they're not, but that you need to have enough for the new daughter cell. And all that has to be made as well as when you are copying the DNA in this sort of phase before it's ready to undergo mitosis again. Okay, so once again, the process is called mitosis. Yeah. Now, most cells in an animal are not dividing. Most cells are not dividing at all, and the cell division has to be very strictly controlled. If you get cell division going too fast, that is when you get a tumor coming along, a cancerous tumor. So cell division does need to be controlled very exactly. It only occurs in certain tissues and at certain times. So it occurs in your bone marrow a lot. You're continually making new white blood cells and new red cells. You get a lot of cell division there. In your skin, there's a small amount of cell division to replace cells which are being replaced, that's being rubbed off. The epithelial cells in the gut, likewise. But things like muscle cells, nerve cells, they don't really, once you're past the embryo stage, they never undergo mitosis. They never undergo cell division. Right, finally, don't confuse this form of cell division with another kind of cell division, which is called meiosis, which is a bit different, and that's involved in making the sperm cells and the egg cells, and that is a separate topic.